It's working. Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Polidor, the chair of the board of the Family Place. Can everyone hear all right? Not well. You can't hear well. I could do it that way. Is that a little better? Okay. So I'm Nancy Polidor. I'm the chair of the board of the Family Place. And along with Nancy Bloomfield, our executive director, and on behalf of the staff and the board, we just want to welcome you to the 12th annual Force for the Future Luncheon. And we are incredibly happy to be back together in person, and we appreciate you all being with us here today. I also want to welcome those of you who are joining us virtually. And it's wonderful to have so many of you invested in the Family Place and interested in discussing up-to-date information on the important topic of perinatal mental health. Each year, the Force for the Future event places a spotlight on a topic connected to the Family Place's mission and vision, and we typically highlight a community partnerships, which is certainly the case today, as we come together to discuss the various roles we all play in supporting perinatal family health in our communities. Thank you all for your interest in learning today and for supporting the Family Place through this event. Sorry, I'm not doing a great job with the mic. In just a moment, I'll turn things over to Nancy Bloomfield. We'll introduce our moderator, Tanya McMurray, and welcome our marvelous panel of experienced professionals, which includes both Family Place staff and our partners. Before I do so, though, I'd like to recognize and show appreciation to our event sponsors and partners. They are Ottaquiti Chi Health Foundation and Reeves Consulting, and we'd like to thank you for your generous support. We'd also like to recognize the kind folks here at the Cornerstone Community Center, the Junction Arts and Media, and Maple Street Catering, who have helped to make this event possible. So thank you for coming today, and I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. And I know you're walking away, but I just wanted to take a moment to recognize you. You can say that's okay. You are our thoughtful and dedicated board leader. You work so hard on behalf of the Family Place, and you give your time so generously. So we have been truly fortunate to have you in the role that you're in, so I just wanted to say thank you. I also just want to thank all of our board members who are here today, our staff, community partners, strategic advisors, foundation partners and donors, family advisory committee members, so many folks who are all part of the team around caring for families. So thank you very much for being part of this today. I'd also like to recognize the staff and board members who came together to put this event together. So thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes and all the planning that went into this today. Most especially, I want to thank our panel, some of whom are just meeting for the first time today, some are meeting for the first time in person, and some have worked together for years. Tanya will be introducing this amazing group in a moment, but I just wanted to thank you all for all of the caring and skill that you bring to your work all the time. And I know how busy all of you are, and you've carved out the time to plan a conversation together and also be here today. So thank you so much for that. So we're very lucky to have this group. I would like to say that there will be a question and answer after the panel has given their remarks today. So if you have a question or a thought that comes up during the panel, please jot it down at your table and so you don't forget. So I'm really pleased to introduce Tanya McMurray, who will be introducing the panel and moderating today. We're really fortunate to have Tanya as part of the Family Place and a leader in our organization, but also just in our community. Tanya plays a very complex role, both as someone who spends lots of time with children and families in need, and brings her trauma-informed expertise and experience to all of that care that she provides. And then she also, as our clinical director, offers support and guidance and consultation to our staff and sometimes partner staff as well. So we are very lucky to have Tanya in our community, and I'm so grateful to have worked with Tanya for so many years. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Nancy. I want to welcome you all here. We are all very excited to be here because this is a topic that we are all very passionate about, and a very important topic, and one that doesn't get talked about as often as it should. Before we dive in, I want to do a couple of definitions so that we're all kind of on the same page about what we're talking about. So you heard Nancy mention perinatal mental health. So perinatal is that period from the beginning of pregnancy through the first year postpartum. And that is the period of time when family members are most susceptible to some mood and anxiety disorders. And so you'll also hear us talk about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which includes postpartum depression, which is probably what most of us think of, but it also can include anxiety. It can include bipolar disorder. It can include obsessive compulsive disorder. If you've had a birth trauma either with your current baby or with a previous baby, it can include post-traumatic stress disorder. It can also include psychosis, which is the ones that make the news when people really lose touch with reality and end up hurting themselves or their babies. That's not the most common presentation for mood and anxiety disorders during the perinatal period. Most of them are much less severe, but also very distressing and very difficult to deal with. I also want to say that sometimes people talk about the baby blues, which is a very real phenomenon. It is not a diagnosable mental health disorder. It is a period of time, fairly short, usually those first 3 or so weeks postpartum, often related to hormones, where people are just more emotional and easily teary and a lot of ups and downs in terms of mood. Not as severe, doesn't last as long, and can still be really overwhelming when it happens. So I didn't want to discount people's experience with that. But just so that as we use terms, people know what we're meaning. The other thing I want to say is I'm going to try really hard, and our panel's going to try really hard to use inclusive language. So we're going to try to use parents and families instead of moms and dads. I will say, because I'm used to saying moms and dads, I promise you I will mess up at least once. And so if you are in a family where the language we're using doesn't apply to you, please give us some grace and know that it was not an intentional oversight. We want to be inclusive and include whatever family constellation people have. But we're going to try really hard to remember that inclusive language. One of the reasons that we are really excited to bring this topic to you is that postpartum or perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are really, really common. It is, in fact, the most common complication of pregnancy. Not all those things people worry about. It is the most common complication of pregnancy. Postpartum Support International says 1 in 5 moms and 1 in 10 dads will have depression or anxiety related to the birth of a child. The Postpartum Stress Center says 91% of all mothers experience some negative intrusive thoughts about harm coming to their baby. So that might be, my baby's gonna stop breathing, I'm gonna drop my baby, somebody's gonna kidnap my baby. 91%. So almost all moms, and they did the research with moms, I'm going to guess dads have some of those fears as well, but there's not a statistic attached to that. But so it is a very, very common phenomenon, and we are really excited to talk about it. And so I'm going to jump in and introduce the panelists so that we can get started. I'm going to start on my right, your left. Samantha Palmer is a child and family therapist at the TLC Family Resource Center in Claremont. She has 11 years experience in early childhood education and development, with certifications in both perinatal mental health and infant mental health. She's credentialed in the state of New Hampshire as an early childhood master professional workshop trainer and program consultant. And she's also a volunteer support coordinator for the state of New Hampshire and a specialized adolescent parent support coordinator for Postpartum Support International. Lauren King is a Children's Integrated Services Early Intervention Service Coordinator and Family Support Home Visitor with the Family Place. She has worked in the Human Services and Early Childhood field for 8 years and is a certified facilitator for the Parents and Babies course designed to help new parents manage the stress of having a baby. Ashley Ricard is a parent and also the lead teacher in the Early Care and Education program at the Family Place. She has 4 biological children and 1 stepchild, ranging in ages from 4 to 17. And during the prenatal and postpartum depressions with her youngest child, she received perinatal support services through Children's Integrated Services at the Family Place. She has more than 10 years of experience working with young children and their families and currently holds a level 3A certificate through the Northern Lights Career Ladder. Amy Johnson is the director of the Parent-Child Center of Northwestern Counseling and Support Services. And while she was there, she helped initiate the HEART program, which supports families with access to home visiting doulas and mental health clinicians during pregnancy and for 8 weeks postpartum. She's worked in human services for more than 20 years, both domestically and internationally. And last but certainly not least, Steve Chapman is a pediatrician at Dartmouth Health Children's Hospital. He has more than 25 years experience in pediatrics and teaches at the School of Medicine at Dartmouth. He has served in the National Health Service Corps and is currently the medical director for Boyle Community Pediatrics Program and the school physician for the Dresden School District. So with that out of the way, we are going to jump in. Ashley, I'm going to ask if you would tell us just a little bit about what your experiences were with postpartum anxiety and depression, what it looked like for you, how that anxiety and depression might feel different in postpartum periods than in other times.
Sure. Thanks, Tanya. Sorry, I'm mic issues here. So I have anxiety prior to becoming a parent. And it definitely was much different than what I suffered with postpartum. There was a lot of differences as far as the weight of being a parent when you, as opposed to when you were suffering anxiety or depression prior. The pressure of being a parent on top of those mental illnesses can really alter how you feel about the world around you, and it really impacted how it would make me feel like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders every day, and to be able to know and recognize that those signs is critical. And so the difference would be that you're looking at this child and you want to make sure that all of their needs are met all the time, in addition to caring for yourself. And part of the anxiety piece for me was I have this schedule that I have to meet every day and set these routines for this child so that I can shape them into, a human being that is going to be able to manage, themselves. And I think that piece itself was the hardest for me. And to make sure that, I was able to make those routines for them was not easy for me every day, because every moment I'm thinking about all these things that I have to do in my head, and I didn't want to leave the house sometimes. And because I knew, as soon as I leave, I have to turn back around and I have to feed them again. And it was a lot of pressure to make sure that I could still manage to walk out the door every day and juggle all the things that each parent needs to do. So,
Sam, you had also shared in some of our prep that you struggle with postpartum depression, and one of the things you said was you didn't seek help. And I wonder if you would talk a little bit about what gets in the way of people seeking help. What held you back? What holds back some of the families that you're working with?
Yeah, sure. So what's really challenging about some of the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders is that when you're in the thick of it, it doesn't feel like symptoms. It's really hard to sit back and be like, oh, this might be a symptom of depression. It feels just like who you are as a person now. So for example, postpartum rage is really common, and as a parent, it's hard to sit back and think like, oh, this might be rage. I'm just really angry all the time, and this is who I am as a person now. So really being able to talk to people, talk to families, and ask those questions that they might just not know is a symptom of a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder is so important, because if you don't know, you don't know. And I love to share this book with all the families that I work with. It's called Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts. And it's a cartoon type book, and it has little thought bubbles of just different things that parents often can be thinking about during that time. And it really just normalizes it, and it helps people be able to relate like, oh yeah, I've thought that too. And that's scary to me, and I'm not the only person on the planet that's ever thought that. And so it can help guide people to help.
Steve, you're a pediatrician. Your wife's a pediatrician. This was easy for you guys, right?
You would think that 4 years of medical school and 3 years of specialized training in pediatrics and telling people advice on how to raise kids all day long would be good preparation for being a parent. But it turns out the important things to know really were not in the pediatric textbooks. And it was really, really, really hard for us. Parenting, our kids are 20 and 22 now, and so this is looking back over some time. And I mean, it really was and is the most amazing journey a human being can go on. To bring home a baby, to be there, to know someone like you'll know no one else in the world like this. You'll know that you're a baby. But at the same time, it is also the hardest thing that a human being can do. And there's that, and we had that sense that we didn't know what we were doing. Like, what is this cry? What is this feeding? It wasn't as much. Spit up. Was that everything? I'm not sure. Like those same things, I think, are universal to parenting. I'll tell you a story from a colleague of ours before our kids were born. A colleague of ours who is also a pediatrician, and his wife is a pediatric psychologist. So they knew a lot about kids. And he tells a story about how they were driving home from the hospital, and their son started crying, and she turned to him and said, "What should we do?" And he said, "How should I know?" So, I mean, for us, it was really, and for me personally, I sort of felt like I should know. I felt like I should be the pediatrician and I should be a really great dad. And I had this sense of not being able to meet it all the time and that I didn't know. And as I look around the room here, I see so much expertise and so much wisdom and so much community. And I think what we figured out is that, we needed to connect to help, that it was okay to ask for help. It was okay to say, I don't know. It was okay to say, I'm really tired and I'm feeling not so great. The moms, my wife and the moms got organized immediately. They had this really great moms group, and they met and they talked about parenting, and they had dinner, and they sort of shared experiences. And it took the dads like 2.5, 3 years to realize that maybe we could do that too, like we could get together. So, our experience, was much of the same. Parenting is amazing. It's incredibly hard. And it's not that you're a success or that you're a failure. It's all of that all rolled up into one. So.
Steve, I have a little bit to add to that. So I think that part of why it was so important to me to be on the panel today was to also advocate that it's okay to have all this professional experience and not always know what to do, and to not be able to manage everything all the time. And that was something that was really important to me to share with the families that we serve, that, although I'm an early educator and I have so many years as being a mom, and I've had all these years of education and years of working with different families and children. I have 5 children, and my 4th and my 5th, I was exhausted. I was like, but I had the supports in place to put myself in a position where I wasn't struggling the same way as I was with my first, where I was like, what do I do? And to have the supports in place prior to the postpartum period was incredibly game-changing. To have that support in place and to be able to manage all the other children on top of that was so much easier to have those supports in place. And knowing that, it's a journey in a different way for every person, and it's okay to not have every answer.
Thank you, Ashley. Amy, so I think when we think about postpartum and we think about dealing with babies, we think about moms, and we think primarily about moms who give birth. And yet we know that perinatal mood disorders impact dads they impact adoptive parents, foster parents. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then maybe also tell us, what are some of the red flags that people should look for to know, ooh, I'm in trouble and I need help?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes I feel like parenting or having a baby is like the Fight Club, where nobody really tells you what happens until you're in the Fight Club. And now you know, but you wish you knew before because you might have made some different decisions. And I feel like that might go extra for our perinatal partners, our fathers, our non-birthing partners, our adoptive and foster parents. We know that having babies, caring for babies, it changes your life. It changes all aspects, all dynamics, all the relationships in your life. And it increases your stress level 10, 20, 100-fold. And that isn't just for the birthing caregiver, that's for everyone that's involved in that parenting piece. And so I think that we often forget that. And I will say, and I'm a big proponent for this, but I think that in our country, we don't do enough for the birthing partner, so it doesn't surprise me that the non-gestational partner, the adoptive parents, the foster parents get overlooked when we're not doing our best for the birthing partner also. So we know that this is prevalent for all individuals who are supporting babies because your relationships change with your partner, your friends, you're tired, you have intrusive thoughts. We know that postpartum depression and related disorders impact everybody. And what that looks like and how that looks is really different. It could be, if you're an adoptive parent, why aren't I attaching to this baby? And now I'm doing all these things and overthinking everything because I want to attach with the baby. If you're a father, maybe you're feeling like, well, I'm not really attaching to the baby because I'm not nursing and I don't have a way to do that at night, and I'm sleeping in, which might feel good, but I'm not, I'm not part of that process, and you might start to feel like you're losing that connection with your baby or not making that connection with your baby. You're losing that connection with your partner. And so it's really important. I know a lot of you are working in programs and hospitals and other community agencies. It's really important when we build programming, perinatal programming that supports families, that we're thinking about all members of those families, including our foster and adoptive population. In terms of what to look for, there's a lot of clinicians in this room, so I'm not a clinician. I like to pretend because I work at Northwestern Counseling, and I try and fit in there, but I'm a social justice human rights person, so, but I think a big red flag is really that the intrusive thoughts, starting to disengage, if you're kind of feeling like you're disengaging from things you enjoy, from your partner, from your friends, disengaging from your baby, that can be concerning and an indication that something's going on. We also, we're looking for suicidal ideations. That is something that we know happens and that we have high percentages of for families in the perinatal period. So I don't want to go into like a litany of what to look for, but I think for me it's really important that we make sure that we're not just asking the birthing caregiver how they're doing, but that we're asking all members of that ecosystem how they're doing.
Thanks, Amy. Lauren, you do it.
Can I weigh in? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I am a foster to adopt mom. So I have gone through this recently. I have a 16-month-old, and she's amazing. And also I definitely had anxiety because I didn't know her prenatal care. So I was obsessive, like, she's not crawling yet. What could this mean? And really just hyper-focusing on, what I thought were her challenges, her deficits, instead of just letting her be a baby. And I would, is she attaching? Is she looking me in the eye? Am I looking at her in the eye? If I let her cry because I have to go take a shower, it's just, and it just starts going. And I don't think I've been asked yet, are you okay? And so I joined the Postpartum Support International Foster Parent Support Group, and we were just talking, and then I just, did my little virtual hand raised, and I was just like, I'm having a really hard time, and just started like crying because you don't get asked as a non-gestational partner.
Sam, I have to add on to that because one thing that might be different for someone who is suffering from all the anxieties of being, a new parent, is they may not reach out for help because they feel as if they're, I suffer from inadequacy issues. Like, if I didn't do this right, then I'm not good enough. And asking for help might be not something that person could actually feel like they should do. And there's a difference between being tired and not doing the same things as you were doing prior to being a parent because of being tired, and not doing those things because you don't have the desire, or you're worried that if you go out of the house today, you're going to have a meltdown out in public, or you're going to just all of a sudden be like, I can't handle this, or I can't do this. And then you're looking as if though you're not being the parent that you think everybody should be and that you definitely should be. And so there's a major stigma around that piece itself, and people who may be connected to you may not be able to look for those signs. And I think that today is a good day to really advocate for being able to reach out. Even if you think that person might be tired, understand that, you sent that message or you made that phone call, and that might have made a difference in their day with their own mental status than, as if you didn't reach out, and the importance of that. And even though it might have added more to their checklist that day, at least that was there for them to feel like you were thinking of them, and, you were there to reach out and say, you're not alone, and, if you need me, I'm here. If it's too much today, that's okay too.
Thanks, Ashley. I think it's important to say that a lot of times people who are struggling will say, I'm okay, and will look like they're okay. And so don't always take I'm okay at face value. In fact, there's a part in the book that Sam mentioned where it talks about how to support someone. And one of the things it says is ask if I can help once, and ask a second time. And when they tell you no the second time, find something you can do and ask if it's okay if you can do it, and then do it. Because people don't ask for help.
I think sometimes, Tanya, if you, instead of, in addition to asking if you're okay and, in saying, what can I, saying, instead of asking, what can I do to help, be like, here, I made you this meal because it is one less thing you have to think about when someone asks if you need anything. Because maybe your brain is too busy to be able to, like, function and be like, I don't know what I need right now. I just know that, there's a need there. I just can't even tell you what it is. And that's one less thing, again, to check off that checklist, and, just offering that support in ways that you don't have to ask them all the time, like, what can I do for you? In addition to, I'm here to help, is really is critical.
Lauren, you're in homes a lot with families, some families with new babies. Can you talk about how families are impacted when new babies come, and what adjustments happen, and how it looks if somebody's really struggling with a mood or an anxiety disorder?
Sure. So bringing a baby home is a huge change. There's the obvious. You now have this human who you're responsible for. So your day looks incredibly different than what your day looked like before. But there can also be a lot of changes within your relationships. Your relationship with your partner, who you may be parenting this child with, your relationship with your friends, who may or may not have children, your relationship with your extended family. A lot of those things change. And one thing that I think isn't talked about a lot either is that we all were parented. We all were children once. Our parents parented us the way that they knew how. And some of those may be fond memories, and for some of us, they may not be fond memories. And when we become a parent and we have our own child, suddenly all of those things are coming back, and we're thinking about them when maybe they were locked away somewhere for a long time. So an incredible amount of change, for everyone in the house. And I think for a parent who is experiencing anxiety or depression or some sort of postpartum mood disorder, it makes the person much less available to themselves, much less available to the child. They're many days probably running on empty. That cup is very low. And that can be difficult for a lot of reasons, and one big reason is it can be much more challenging for a parent to form that special bond with their baby that we know is so important. It's much more difficult to be available to that when you're dealing with depression and anxiety and mood disorders.
Can I add just a little bit? So I so appreciate that, and I think that's such an important thing to note, is that as practitioners, we're working in service of attachment, because attachment is so profound to a child's development. And so if we're working with a family who's struggling with a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder and they're not engaging with their baby, we know that that can have an impact on their development. And we know that that impact can have long-term consequences. And it's not meant to scare a family. We're not going to go in and say, if you don't pick up your baby's going to have a developmental challenge for the rest of their life, so get it together. But we do know as practitioners how important that attachment is to the development of the baby and how that can have a long-term impact. And so perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are really important to uncover and understand and support families around for that reason.
And it's about 1 million synaptic connections that form every second when a parent is doing a serve and respond interaction with a child, and learning how to engage socially, learning cognitive content, learning how to self-regulate. Those synapses only form once as kids go through that first year of life. You get really one chance at it. But I also heard, we were talking before, that you only need to meet the needs of your child 30% of the time to have really, really effective attachment. So it's not that you need to do it all the time or be successful all the time. And it's always not all about just meeting your child's needs. It's about engaging and meeting what they want, but giving them what they need.
Yes, thank God we don't have to do it 100% of the time, right? we would doom them all. We tend to live in a pretty rural area. Sam, could you talk about kind of how that impacts support that people get, how they reach out for support, where support is or is not?
Sure. So living in a rural area, I see a lot in my work, limited transportation. So if a family lives out in, on a dirt road or in the middle of nowhere, or even, I work in Sullivan County, there's very limited public transportation. Getting to healthcare or mental health care can be really challenging, especially if you're having a mental health challenge yourself. So, if some people, just get a Medicaid ride. Well, that's a lot of steps to be able to do, to be able to call the Medicaid person, 2 days before, get your baby in the carrier, all of the things that come with getting a baby out of the door. That
goes back to that checklist piece too.
Absolutely. It's really, really challenging in rural areas. And we just have less availability of providers, of hospitals, of therapists. There's fewer support groups, fewer parenting classes. The stigma when you know everybody in your hometown and all of the clinicians that work at Counseling Associates or, what have you, it can be really hard to feel safe to go. There is now, one good thing that came out of COVID is there are a lot of more telehealth options, which is really helpful. There's support groups and things like that. So, and we, I think we'll say again that social support is so important. So to be able to have your people to be able to help you, and if you don't have your people, figuring out who you can reach out to. So whether it's home visiting, whether it's, Postpartum Support International, really just gathering your troops, hopefully during pregnancy. So, we can kind of front load the support is really helpful, especially in rural areas where you can't just walk to the hospital.
And I want to move now to kind of talk about what are some of the supports that are available, because I think it can be overwhelming. I think people often have trouble reaching out, and I think one of the messages we want to send to people is to reach out. I think one of the things that I don't think we've explicitly named, but I think a lot of people are afraid, if I admit this, people are going to think I'm an awful parent, that, only bad parents think these things. If I, I think somebody when we were talking at one point said if I was honest, they would send DCF to my front door, right? And that's the fear. I think that's actually not the reality, and we hope that people will hear that message. But in terms of kind of what's available, Amy, I know you, out of your own experience of depression and OCD, created the HEART program. And could you talk a little bit about what that is and what that looks like?
Sure. So when I became a mom, I think we were talking about this as a panel, the love at first sight. I was worry at first sight, like doom at first sight. It was just immediate, instant worry, intrusive thoughts. And I remember going home and sitting on the couch thinking, this looks like my house, but it doesn't feel like my house. This is my body, but it doesn't feel like my body. My mom's holding a baby. Is that her baby? Can it be her baby? I don't think that's my baby. And so I remember the home visitor coming, the lactation counselor, and I just remember being at the window, just like with the curtains open, just like waiting for her to drive down the road, because I knew when she showed up, I would feel better, even just for the day. And so when I went back to work, like 4 weeks later, I thought, we need to do better for families, because having one lactation counselor come to the house 3 times is not enough. And so when I started at NCSS, I started to kind of assemble who are the folks in my group who are on board with trying to start this program. And so HEART is helping everyone access resources and thrive. And it's a perinatal support program that includes home visiting mental health clinicians who are perinatal mental health certified clinicians. It's also home visiting perinatal doulas. We support all families in Franklin Grand Isle as a universal program, regardless of insurance, regardless of the number of kids. From pregnancy, like the first minute you find out you're pregnant, up to 18 months postpartum. You can have a doula, a clinician, both. We support foster, adoptive, families who have their children go into DCF custody after they give birth, because those are families that need support from us as well. We support families who've had a loss in pregnancy, a loss postpartum, and then we provide concrete supports. We have groups. Just this really nice, comprehensive program. And we really based it off of kind of a Scandinavian model that you should really be followed from pregnancy. We said 18 months postpartum because that's typically, at the time when we were doing the research, that's when it's not considered postpartum depression anymore. Now the research is, I think, 3 years. But we can follow people up to 18 months and then transition them to other programs as needed. And so we've tried to work with the practitioners in our region to say, can we have families, let families know that this exists and that everyone can access it, and it's really more of an opt-out versus an opt-in to really destigmatize perinatal mental health disorders and help folks to understand everyone needs help during this critical period, because you're caring for a baby or you're moving through the loss process if you've lost a baby, and that everyone should have folks in their corner supporting them through that process to help them to be healthy and well, to help their baby be healthy and well. So that is a program that is near and dear to my heart, and I consider my second child, and something that I hope that expands to the rest of the state of Vermont, because it's very needed, because there are definitely pockets of the state that there really isn't anything for families, and families sit on waiting lists and then they struggle, and that's just not okay.
Another resource that I think we wanted to talk about, Tanya, was Good Beginnings of the Upper Valley. Being someone who had a volunteer from Good Beginnings, I can tell you that that person showing up once a week to give my other children that hour or two of attention took so much relief off my shoulders, because you have this guilt of I'm not giving, I'm already struggling mentally, and I'm already struggling because I'm pouring out of an empty glass every day, and I feel so guilty because my other children are not getting what, the attention that they used to, and they're, and oftentimes they're understanding of that, but as a parent like that, you feel like you're not doing the same things as you used to, and what kind of, it's in the back of your mind of what kind of damage could this possibly doing is to your other children if they're seeing that this baby is getting all of your attention and they're no longer getting the same amount as they were before. That's just one more thing that we think, we may think of when we have a new baby in the house, and it really does contribute to your anxiety. So having that resource of, someone being able to come in and, even read a book to your other children, like the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, it's true. And it's okay to need a village.
Thank you for remembering that. Lauren, you're trained in parents and babies. Can you talk a little bit about that and what supports that provides to families?
Yeah, so Parents and Babies, formerly known as Mothers and Babies, is an evidence-based curriculum. It provides support to new parents. It's really aimed as an opportunity to learn tools to handle stress. But those tools used could be helpful towards depression and anxiety, baby blues. So it's based on concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy, attachment, and mindfulness. So in the Parents and Babies course, they focus on 3 areas for every new parent. So the first is our thoughts, learning to recognize, are our thoughts helpful or unhelpful? Learning to take a step back and be an observer of those thoughts. And when you have a moment where you're aware that that's an unhelpful thought, such as, oh, I'm such a bad mom. Oh, that's an unhelpful thought. Let me interrupt that. Let me set that aside. A really simple thing that when practiced can make a huge difference for anyone. The second thing that they talk about is our pleasant activities. This could be a self-care moment. It could be a moment where you're enjoying a hobby. It can be done by yourself, with your new child, or with friends and family. So it's a moment to refill your cup, boost your mood, and if done with the baby, it can also be an opportunity to form more attachment while doing something good for yourself. And the third area that they focus a lot on is our interactions with others. So like Ashley and some other folks were saying, it does take a village. So building your team of people around you, your friends, your family, your partner, your community members, building that team around you. Also, some harder things within that is learning how to communicate to that team. So you've built your team, how do you tell them what you need? Because a lot of us do say, oh, I'm fine. Well, actually, we do want help. So how do we express those needs to people? And also, how do we set boundaries? Maybe we have a really, really helpful mother-in-law, but we need to set some boundaries. And how do we do that respectfully? So our thoughts, our pleasant activities, and our connections with others are the 3 main areas of focus in the Parents and Babies course.
Can I add just really quick, there's a lot of practitioners in the room, which is exciting. So this is a model where we have several trainers in the state of Vermont. So if you are interested in becoming trained in the model or learning more about the model, we can absolutely help you to do that, free of charge. It's really simple. It's a half day to a full day of training, and you don't have to have, it uses CBT concepts, but you don't have to have a master's degree to deliver the service. So if you're associate level or bachelor level, home visitor, or working with families, you can be trained in the curriculum as well and use that with families.
Thanks, Amy and Lauren. Sian, you volunteer with Postpartum Support International, and they provide a lot. That's actually one of my first referrals to parents who are struggling. Can you talk about kind of what they offer and what you do for them?
Absolutely. I am one of the 3 New Hampshire local support coordinators for Postpartum International. So they kind of have 2 sides to the coin. They have the side for help seekers, which they have over 35 support groups almost every day. Not 35 every day, 35 total, at least one every day. They have a call and text helpline. They have over 400 local support coordinators nationally. They also have a peer mentor program, so then you're paired up with a mom who's gone through similar, or a parent who's gone through similar challenges. They have an online directory which lists all of the perinatal mental health trained clinicians, and you can sort that by insurance type, whether they offer telehealth. It's beautiful. It's really comprehensive. And then they also have, for professionals, they have a consult line for perinatal psychiatric consult line. There we go. Where you can ask questions about mental health care pertaining to pregnancy, postpartum, or preconception. They also have the perinatal mental health certification, which is a training, and then you take a standardized test, and then you get to put the letters after your name, and that helps people identify that you have gone through this specialized training. And then they also have frontline provider training for those in primary care to provide some education on how to help families in your practice.
And postpartum.net,
Yes.
right? So an easy one to remember for the website. Steve, we've talked about a lot of kind of formal supports, but as Ashley said, it takes a village. I wonder if you could talk about what kinds of informal supports there are in the community. What's the role of community members? How do parents reach out? How do people help new families that they may be in contact with?
Well, building on the "it takes a village" theme, I think everyone has a role in parenting, whether you have kids or not. And it's how we support our friends, it's how we support our family, it's how we support our neighbors. And again, just looking at the expertise and the resources in the room, there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of supports in the Upper Valley. But it's hard to connect, and it's easy to stay isolated. And so one thing I keep asking myself is, how can we have a no wrong doors community where maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's the prenatal visit, maybe it's in the newborn nursery. For sure, family resource centers are at the heart of this. The family place being, I love the family place. Whenever they ask me to do something, here I am. I see them as such an important resource for the community, but really all family resource centers. Thanks, I'm not going to list them all, but TLC in Claremont, parent-child centers in Vermont, map community resources, take the time to get to know families, and start to weave connections based on trust, engagement, interests, and goals, right? Because not all parents need the same connections. Not all parents need the same resources. And so what will help you? So lots of things, right? It's parent groups, dad groups for sure, even though it takes us a while. Libraries, playgrounds, right? Remember when we closed playgrounds because it could be COVID and we had them all, the emergency tape around them and don't go there? And we're reassembling some of these ways that we used to just naturally get together all the time. There are schools and after-school programs. There's the playgrounds. There's other civic groups and nonprofits. Even Kendall here in Hanover has got a daycare and has some outreach that the older folks, including my parents, get involved in sometimes. But it's thinking about what is in that community and how do each one of us in the community play a role in parenting even when they're not our kids.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a little bit onto that, Stephen. So in addition to all those resources, sometimes it might be, and kind of looping back around to a question we had earlier, in a situation where you're dealing with any anxiety or depression postpartum, you may not want to reach out to those places. Again, I'm going back to the checklist because it's one more thing that you have to worry about doing, and that you're just like, I can't do it. I can't reach out. I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to deal with anybody. And I think that as a community, it's important to be the person to knock on the door and be like, I'm here to help you. It's okay if you haven't washed your hair, or, it's okay if you don't look the way you would think that you should look. I'm here to help you go to this play group, or I'm here because I feel like it's important for me to show my face to you that, it's okay to not be perfect, to go outside and to go and do these things and use the resources available to you.
Can I add something? So one of my favorite things that we do at TLC is we have these magnets, and we call them the helping hand. And on the magnet, there's a white silhouette of a hand, and then on the side there's different resource centers, like TLC's number. Then there's the local domestic violence. There's all these different important numbers, and then we help parents to identify 5 people that they could call or text when they're struggling. And the stipulation is that one of them has to be somebody you could call at 2 a.m. and that they'll answer. So it's such a powerful thing to do with moms or parents. And, and if they don't have people, then, okay, what's a call line? What's a text line? So really, we do that during pregnancy. So when at 2 a.m. they're like, I can't take it anymore, they have that at their fridge, okay, I'm going to call, this friend or whoever.
I want to make sure we save some time for people to jump in and ask questions. So I think we will invite the audience to join us a little bit more and see what questions we have. Yes.
I don't have a question. It just keeps ringing in my mind. I have a friend, and she was loading the back of her car with and this times me, the playpen and the carriage and this, that, and the other thing at her parents' home. And she turned to her father and she said, "You never told me like this." And she said, "You never asked." And I just thought that just sort of rings in my mind. I've known that for a long time. But thank you all for doing what you're doing. I must say, I wish I'd heard it a long time ago. But anyways, it's been very educational.
Anya.
This is a question for Sam. So I work at the family place as a family support home visitor, and I don't get a lot of referrals for foster parents. But we know there's lots of foster parents in our area, and we work with a lot of foster children, like in our early intervention program. But as home visitors, I don't have a lot on the caseload. And I'm wondering what would be helpful as a foster parent. What would you suggest as a way to bridge the gap between foster parents and our programs? Because I often feel like there's a stigma to ask for help, especially as a foster parent, because you're sort of the next in line. You're kind of there as the protective person because there was a fault, in the first step for that biological parent. And so I often hear foster parents say, no, especially at things like play groups. They'll say, I will ask you questions here, but I don't want a home visitor. And I'm wondering what would be helpful. Is it in the hospital that you need a referral? Is it DCF or DCYF that you're working with to make the referral? What can we do as an agency to help connect foster parents?
So I just want to make sure everybody heard the question, since you don't have a mic. And we also have some people online. So the question is that we, at the family place, don't get a ton of referrals for home visitors for foster parents. And Anya's wondering kind of what, Sam, could be helpful as a foster parent. What and how would be the best way to connect with foster parents to offer those supports?
So the way that I was connected with a home visitor was through DCYF, and I have Waypoint who comes to my house, and her name is Joan, and she's amazing. So I think that offering in the hospital will be helpful for infants, but also connecting with the DCYF workers and building a relationship with them. I've noticed, at least in my work, that a warm handoff is most helpful. So if you can get a relationship with the DCYF or DCF workers, so then they can talk to the foster parent and see if that's what they're hoping for. And I also think that would be really helpful in limiting, changing of placements if foster parents had more support in, with home visiting. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I almost feel like we need that's a targeted area of outreach, rather, because we do get DCF-involved parents referred to us, but not foster parents. Maybe we need to target our outreach to DCF with foster parents.
I wonder about we started to do a lot of work with embedding practitioners into offices. So we have a family resource navigator who works in the community action office once a week. We've also connected with DCF to say we have some parents as teachers, parent educators, and I think we can do mutual support by having our folks here to support your folks, and then to provide a direct link for families to get a home visitor right from the get-go. And so I think about that, if people are familiar with Dulce, it's embedding a family specialist from the PCC into the pediatric office, and that works so well. And so I think, are there other opportunities in other community-based organizations where we can do that to help with that support right from the start?
So we have a pediatric resident, Anne Marunsik, who has been doing a project. She's in the middle of a project about how to better support foster parents and help them do the enormous job that they've signed up. And she's giving grand rounds tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., pediatric grand rounds. And so, Anya, I'd just love to have you chat with her, because I'm sure you would have some great ideas for her.
And I just want to echo, Sam, what you said about kind of it could save disruptions if foster parents got support. Because one of the things we know is that one of the most damaging things to kids in foster care is that repeated move to a new home, that really is damaging. And so if we can provide supports that keep kids in that first home that they go to after their biological home, it really saves a lot of trauma along the way.
We were talking about earlier how there's so much pressure to be perfect, and I imagine for a foster parent, one would feel that immensely, that they have to be doing a really good job. And a lot of people, whether we're foster parents or parents to our own children, there can be fear in reaching out to ask for help. And we were talking about earlier, we are a group of people who work in a helping profession, and even we will go to our child's doctor's appointments and want to make it look like everything is fine, but will not say that we're having a hard time with anything. And we are people who know that it's perfectly okay to reach out for help. So I think that pressure for perfection is a huge barrier in people's level of comfortability in asking for help.
So I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I didn't talk about advocacy for a minute. So we're talking about what can we do with what we have and the resources that we have. But the fact of the matter is that as a country, we are 39th out of 40 developed countries in the resources that we give to early childhood development. We way under-resource the work that we're talking about and the important and crucial parenting in that first year. And so all of us in this room see and hear things that most people don't, and have a perspective that most people don't. And it really is on us to amplify voices that we hear at any level that feels comfortable, all the way from the federal level with the expanded child tax credit that reduced poverty in kids by 40%, and we know that it works, and we let it lapse, and we could bring it back at some point, but we haven't, to state levels, Senate Bill 56 in Vermont, expanding support for quality, affordable child care, paid family leave. I don't know if that's still in there, but it was. All sorts of steps in the right direction. Senate Bill 56 in Vermont right now. Rebecca Whitley, Senator Whitley in Manchester, introduced and has what she calls the Momnibus collection of bills that's working through the New Hampshire legislature right now that will increase support for family resource centers and improve voucher reimbursement for child care, all the way down to local levels. Some towns are reducing or eliminating local property taxes for daycares and making it more affordable to open a daycare in your community. That's something that happens at the local level. Lebanon has been very active in that. To where you work, what's the leave policy? What's the parenting support? What's the nursing at work policy? Is there a place? To neighbors, right? My neighbor just had a baby. What do I do? We can do advocacy at any of those levels. It's all advocacy, but we cannot accept the status quo. So I apologize for getting on the soapbox, but I would not have been able to forgive myself if I didn't talk about change that needs to happen.
Thank you, Steve, because we know there are bigger systemic issues that impact all of us.
Yeah, to your point about the more challenges and Lauren's societal challenges Hi, I'm Madeline. I'm the I work at our local business school, but I'm also on the board of the family place, and I'm also a parent. I'm just curious, based on, and I'm not saying that it was any easier for past generations, but do you think this is more prevalent now than it was in the past, just because of some of the societal pressures that you're talking about, social media, technology taking off, a lot of political and more like societal issues happening in this day and age? Is this more common now than in the past?
I think that excuse me if this isn't the socially acceptable way to describe this, but I think in previous generations there was a lot of pull up your big girl and big boy pants and get to work, and that pressure made it harder for people to really actually express that they were in need of something. And as far as the social media piece, I definitely think that can impact negatively as well as positively, because we live in a world of memes, and I think that if your friend that you have on social media is posting all these memes about how they're basically saying how they're feeling without saying it's them, I've had people reach out to me and be like, hey, I saw that you were posting X, Y, and Z a few times, and I'm just reaching out to make sure that you're doing okay. So that would be one positive from the social media, but also the fact that people live these perfect lives on social media, that they make their lives appear as if they're just gorgeous, pictures that they painted, even though they might have a tornado behind them that they're not actually posting on social media. And I think that piece itself is a balance and understanding, and really like advocating that life isn't all about social media, and it's not exactly what you're seeing all the time. And as an educator and someone who obviously is a parent, I post things that may not even be all that relevant to my personal life, but I post them because I feel like the people that are on my social media might see them and be like, I can relate to that, and I see that it's okay to feel that way. Even if it's something that isn't personally happening to me, I feel like advocating and just having awareness in general for generalized topics is helpful for the people that are on my social media. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of the sort of positive side of it. I just assumed it was negative.
Well, I'm of that other generation. And I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I thought we didn't have social media. We had neighbors, and we really depended on each other. Can Andy come over for lunch, or can Steve take a nap? And we would walk up and down the street in our strollers and be part of each other. And I still have friends from that time. So, and the family was there. Some people had close by family, some didn't. But we all seemed to manage sharing themselves with each other. My oldest is 60 years old.
And I know there was a question back in the back, too.
I had to chime in about that because I have two children. I'm going to speak from the parent perspective. My mom was a single mom. She didn't work. There was a dad. He was working, and then he passed away, and then she had to go back to work. And I think about when my sisters grew up with her, when she wasn't working, there was so much community, and she relied on her neighbors. And then as soon as she had to go back to work with me, there were a lot of problems, a lot of stress. And then as a parent now, I work with, and I had to deal with daycare and things like that. And I feel like no matter what era, there is so many challenges and also so many successes, but it's always hard. It will always be hard, and I feel like it always was hard. And there are a lot of good things that have grown out of that, but I talked to my husband's mom who had no license and no car, so if her friends weren't available, she was stuck at home with her kids all day, and that was really isolating. But she didn't have to deal with going back to work and pumping, for example. So I feel like there's just so many benefits and so many drawbacks to every situation, but having these supports and these supportive people no matter what, whether it's like online or your neighbors or your childcare, whatever it is really important.
So there was one in the back of the room, Liz.
Thank you so much. We learned some really good things. Thank you so much. One of the comments was around it takes a village to raise a child. And I think the workplace plays a great important role in that. So what role should a workplace play in supporting associates who are going through the perinatal challenges?
So I have a partial response to that, and I want to hear from others as well. In my own experience, the most helpful thing a workplace has offered me is flexibility and understanding. There's been times that my daughter has been home with me on a Zoom meeting for work, or times that I've had to flex my hours or take a day off and use sick time. And that can be really, really stressful if you're balancing the needs of your child and the needs of work. Sometimes I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions and doing a bad job at both. So to receive the understanding and the flexibility, to really have permission to take the time that I need to take care of myself and my child, and then get back to my work, is huge for me. But
that's why we're called the family place. I can say honestly that being an employee of the family place has been a blessing, and my husband's here too, has been a blessing to our family, and being parents of so many children. And I'm sorry, Kim, but Dawson just threw up again, and he was on the mend, but now Layla's now sick, and having that understanding and having such amazing support at your employer is critical. And the fact that I started working at the family place with a 5-month-old, and to go to work every day with your 5-month-old and to know that you're there with them, and honestly, my start date was supposed to be a week before, but my son got a stomach bug before, and so I actually had Kelly as a visiting nurse, and I'm messaging Kelly saying, this is going to look so bad, but I'm Dawson's throwing up, and I'm worried about how much intake he's had, and now I'm texting my director, and the response that I got from the family place was amazing. Ashley, it's okay. It's okay. Like worry about your family, and to have that support was amazing. And to have that understanding, it makes it so much easier to be a parent and an employee somewhere.
I think we talk about parent-child. I'll talk about parent-child center specifically, that we've adopted national standards, and one of the domains of the standards is family-centeredness. And when we talk about that, we're not just talking about the clients and the families that we serve, but we're talking about the staff who support the families that we serve. And so to be family-centered, to be able to support the staff who serve the families to make sure that they're healthy and well and they have what they need. I think the other piece is that as a state, I wish we could get it together and pass a comprehensive leave policy, but we have not been able to do that, hopefully soon. But you can work with your board at your organization to come up with a comprehensive leave policy for your organization. And I think that that's crucial if you want to retain high quality staff so that you don't have turnover, which then impacts the families that we serve.
I just have two quick things. I think flexibility is key, and having an employer say, take the time with your family, it's like, oh, thank God. Because there are so many employers that's like 4 call-outs and you're written up or whatever. And I have 4 kids. Like, that, you each get 1 sick day a year, it's not feasible. And also at TLC, we're allotted 2 hours of self-care every week. So having that time built into your schedule to go for a walk with a coworker, or there's chair yoga that's offered, but there's different activities throughout the week, and having that time built in to be able to just be a human is so helpful.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Carly Ogden. I'm a social worker at CHAD, and one of the clinics I help support are the NICU follow-up clinic. So I interact with a lot of parents who are in very high stress situations, and more often than not, they're not coming to clinic to see me, but they get to see me as a package deal. And so I guess one of the questions I have is, knowing that sometimes in that setting, parents have other things they need to get to, or, the baby is needing to be fed, or so it can be stressful to not just be able to sit and have a thoughtful conversation. I guess I would just love like one or two things that in those moments of kind of chaos that I can leave with them, or I could even just say, knowing that they're feeling all sorts of stress. Any suggestions that would be kind of like, if I can say one thing, it would be this. And I do actually give out that, the Postpartum Support International. I've utilized that several times, so that's at least one tool that I've kind of attached to. But any other ideas or guidance?
This is a very quick thought. One thing that I do a lot, I love commenting on what I'm seeing, especially between baby and parent. So making a comment, oh, look at the way that he looks up at you, or look at the way he's so comfortable in your arms. That's a strategy probably a lot of people already know, but I feel like it can open up room for more conversation, and hopefully maybe make the parent be like, oh yeah, like my baby does like me, and feel a little better.
I think that also, again, going back to the village piece and, saying it's okay to not have to balance everything on your own and I'm here to help, that would be, I'm sure you already know that, but honestly, like as someone who already suffers from inadequacy issues and, trying to aim to do way more than I'm supposed to every day, I think that, there was one piece that stuck with me that someone said to me, and it was a counselor, and she said, I feel like you always have a sandwich, and instead of eating your sandwich, you're just piling more on, and one of these days the tower of your sandwich is just going to come crashing down. And so just adding that piece of, it's okay that you can't do it all, and let's get you some help.
I love the idea of using the child's behavior as your language. That's just like A+, number one, like my favorite. But I think the other thing, and I think it's just so true, is all parents have ambivalent feelings. And people hearing that, because you assume that, like, I'm just doing it wrong and I just don't have it together, and there's something wrong with me, that I don't feel happy or I'm stressed or whatever. But someone just saying all parents have ambivalent feelings is huge.
And I would add to that, I think sometimes just saying this is really hard sometimes, right? That sometimes you can't fix it, but acknowledging that it's hard and it's okay that it's hard.
Sometimes you can't fix it. I like that. Often you can't fix it.
So I think we are at time. So am I turning it back over to you, Nancy?
Well, I wish we didn't have other places to be, because I feel like we could just keep talking, and I'm thinking about all of you from Dartmouth Health Children's and the work that we're starting to do around supporting parents postpartum, and all of the different initiatives around trying to understand families' needs as early on as possible with screenings. There's just so much conversation to be had. So to be continued on all of it, and it's just wonderful, again, that you all made the time to be here to join us for the conversation, that those who have joined us through the live stream have connected with us that way, and I really look forward to continuing this in whatever way that happens in our work, in our neighborhoods, with our families. I just want to take a second again to say thank you to all of you for the time, just for sharing your experiences so personally and offering such grounded suggestions for things that we can do both on the national scale through advocacy and with the people that we love or maybe are just running into at the grocery store. That's who I keep thinking about today. Thank you for leaving us with such practical suggestions, and thank you for all the work you're doing all the time. Families are really lucky that they get to meet and work with all of you. So thank you again. As a part of continuing the conversation is that we will be sending out an email as a follow-up. So if you registered, if you did not register, leave us your email, because in the email follow-up to today, you'll have the link to the recording in case you might want to share it with someone else in your life or your work. And there'll also be some links to resources, including some of the ones that we're talking about today, and maybe some additional resources that could help us or help you continue to be educated on this topic. So thank you again. You're welcome to stay and continue to connect for a little while. And it's really wonderful to have spent the lunchtime with you all. Thanks again.